Hi everyone, my name is Jesse Robbins and welcome to LPLE from Dialogue FM. We're the podcast that lets you practice listening in English. We speak English slowly and clearly so that you can follow along and understand native English speakers more easily. I'm excited to help you improve your English listening skill, as well as help you learn new vocabulary, grammar, and idioms commonly heard in conversations among native English speakers. If you want to practice listening in English, then we invite you to join our conversation. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Jesse.
Well, this is a very special edition of LPLE. Normally, you and I are in the same room talking to each other. You are normally about 5 feet away from me, so I can see you, and of course, you can see me. Today is the first time that we are recording from our respective houses. So I can't see you and you cannot see me. However, we're having a normal conversation.
I hope so. I can imagine you.
Good. Yep. Same here. You know what I look like. You know my mannerisms. You know that I like to use my hands and my arms and my face to talk. And likewise, I know your mannerisms as well. I think that this is going to be a good transition for our listening audience, because many times we have conversations on the phone, so it's much more difficult for non-native English speakers to catch the conversation because they can't see the other person. What do you think? Do you feel the same way about when you teach English to your students, that they say, oh yeah, but I can't talk on the phone, it's too hard? And then also maybe from your experience learning French, did you find it difficult to have conversations on the phone?
I certainly did. I remember a number of experiences that happened to me that I was humble enough that I didn't have big expectations of being successful, but I really was quite fluent when I moved to France, and I was actually, for the most part, pleased, but I had some university classroom experiences that were very confusing. I understood every word, but I didn't quite understand what was expected of me. But the worst nightmare was the telephone. I asked for people to repeat things that were, I later learned were absolutely normal. So, like, how do you spell, it would be like in Seattle saying, how do you spell Denny Street? Right. I had to ask ridiculous questions.
Mm-hmm. Is it different for you now that many years later, do you feel more comfortable speaking in French on the phone?
Yes, it seems to work very well. I have a conversation with a friend about once every 3 weeks that lasts for an hour or two, and there's no problem. Of course, we're friends. And I also have to say that when I first moved to France, it was, I don't know. I mean, the quality of the phones wasn't as good as it is now either. For my own students, I think they've spent so much time online, they've seen so many films, etc. I think they hear and handle the phone better than students, say, 10 years or 20 years ago used to.
That's very true. Well, I'm Jane. I haven't seen you or talked to you for a few weeks. I understand that you were on vacation. Is that correct?
I wasn't on vacation, but I was traveling, and that was quite an adventure because I kept the entire time I was anxious about getting online so that I could do some more work. It's the first time I've tried to do a vacation when I was still working, and it was difficult to balance, I must say. But I got it all done and have some very happy memories as well.
Where did you go?
With my husband, we took a road trip south to California for a big wedding, but we stopped in many places to see old friends. We stopped on the beautiful Oregon coast. We went as far south as Palo Alto. And it was a familiar trip because we take a similar trip every year and a half or so. But there was a huge wedding, huge. It went on for 3 days. And so that was something I'm not used to, but fun. And it was in the gorgeous Napa Valley. So very beautiful. And no rain. It was lovely.
How long were you traveling? Was it 1 week, 2 weeks?
16 days, exactly.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yes, it's enough to make you feel that it's enough to make you forget anything you were worried about back home. So, a weekend isn't enough, but 16 days, it can really change the way you feel and think.
Indeed, indeed. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's really, really nice to talk to you again. We have lots of things to talk about, lots of stories to share. Today, one of the things I'd like to talk to you about is something that I think your students will really understand. So if they listen to this episode, I would like to get their opinion about this topic. Now, if you remember, earlier today, I sent you a short text message telling you that I was at a special event that lasted about 2 hours, and the topic of this event was about racial discrimination in American entertainment. So, for example, American television, American movies, and American theater and plays. And this was not limited to discrimination against Asians, but general discrimination against blacks, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, LGBTQ, disabled. So basically anyone who is not a beautiful, attractive white person. And I remember thinking back to my time living in Japan and studying Japanese. I remember when I was in Japan for 3 months, when I would tell people that I was American, I could see that they were a little bit confused because, as I would later find out, Japanese impression of Americans is white. Americans are white people. So I had to confidently explain that No. There's many different kinds of Americans in America. There's blacks, there's Latino Americans, there's Filipino Americans, Chinese Americans. There's all kinds of different types of Americans. That was a very unique learning experience. Now, the question is, why did they have this impression? Why did they think that Americans are only white people? And I realize, of course, that it comes from the media. What movies did they watch? What television shows did they watch to learn English? Well, most of the actors in those shows are white. There was not a lot of representation from other people of color. So today's conversation was about that problem. Why are there not lots of people of color in media and in entertainment? And how can we start to solve that problem? What do you think?
I have a question, which is, I think that there's concern about it because proportionate to, say, the number of different minority groups, in other words, the number of Hispanics, Asians, blacks, mixed race people that exist in the United States is not correctly represented in the media. Is that what you're saying? In other words, the percentage of minority, as they're sometimes called, populations that actually exist is bigger than what we would see in the media. In other words, we do certainly see African American actors, Asian actors and actresses, Hispanic, but is the concern that the proportion is still way below the actual proportions within the society as a whole? Is that what the concern is?
There's multiple concerns. That's one of them. That the number of, for example, the number of African Americans in entertainment does not represent the number of African Americans in our overall American population.
Right.
That's one problem. Another problem that was discussed is how different people of color, how different ethnic groups and minority groups are portrayed in the media. What stereotypes are being used to describe the different characters on the show. So, for example, sometimes African Americans in entertainment are given a characteristic of being aggressive or addicted to drugs or alcohol. They're not given the opportunity to play a successful character as much as their white counterparts. Another example is Asian men. This is a common example. Asian men in American movies almost never have the chance to kiss a girl in the show.
A girl of any race whatsoever.
Of any race, yeah. Correct. Especially of a different race, if the girl is not Asian. You rarely ever see that. I cannot remember one American show where the Asian actor, the Asian man in the show, kissed another girl. Because the idea is that American men are not masculine enough to be affectionate with another woman. The Asian male can be smart. They can be sneaky. They can be maybe even funny, but romantic, they cannot be romantic. Intimate? No, they cannot be intimate. Masculine? No, they cannot be the most masculine person in the show. So these are the many topics that we got to talk about during today's conversation.
Mm-hmm. What I think is missing a lot are depictions of sort of middle-class non-whites. They're always, pretty much as you've said, they're always doing character roles. In other words, the middle-aged, maybe the middle-aged nurse or the stretcher carrier or the fireman, or, they're always playing not a romantic lead, not just sort of quote unquote ordinary parents, or just ordinary couples, middle-class couples. Those are usually depicted as whites for whatever reason. At least that's my impression. I have to admit, I don't watch too much TV. So my impressions may be a little false.
No, that sounds pretty true. There's a lot of social and economic misrepresentation of different minority groups, different ethnicities as well.
Yes. I agree.
The overall conversation was very, very interesting. I hope that our society at large and our small city in specific can continue to have these kinds of conversations. I think that they can be very constructive, very helpful, and most importantly, very inspiring for both white people and non-white people. Inspiring because we can actually decide to change behavior and start inviting more non-white people into different acting roles in theater, television, and movies. Now, I will connect this to the very beginning story about my time in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
See, my hope is that if Japanese people and Vietnamese people, Chinese people, East Asian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, South America, when they watch American movies and television, I hope that in the future, their idea of America will change, will improve. First, I hope they realize that our political system is not as crazy as it's been over the past few months.
Yes.
But I also hope that when they think of an American person, they won't just think of a white person, but they will think of many different kinds of people. Blacks, Asians, Latino, Indian. I hope that they will understand that America, in certain parts of our country at least, can be very diverse and filled with lots of different people, lots of different cultures, lots of different skin tones, skin color, lots of different languages. And I think that's something you and I agree on. That would be pretty cool.
It would be, and it's not just here. I can give you maybe a very short anecdote. a friend of mine who this happened maybe 15 years ago. I was going to be in England for 2 weeks, house sitting for friends, and an American friend of mine who had not yet been abroad asked if I could use some company, and I said sure, and she came, and it was her first time in London, and completely to her credit, she has been back many times, but when she got to London, she was almost upset, as if it didn't match these sort of, I don't know, the movies from the 1950s or 60s or something, because there were so many races there. And I reminded her that the British Empire considered everyone a possible citizen. But she was very, very shocked by it. It wasn't the England that she expected because it was so multiracial. Of course, she got used to it, and she's now quite fond of London and has gone back several times. But in France, you will see the same thing. There are North African French people, black, African French people. It is very diverse.
Vietnamese French people. Many Vietnamese
indeed
people live in French.
Absolutely. There's a whole part of Paris which is even known as I think, French Saigon or Little Saigon. It's just extremely mixed, and at times an American can go there and be equally surprised. So, and I don't think it's racism at all. It's just a surprise. We all have stereotypes, and anyway.
Well,
it's very widespread. We're not the only melting pot in the world, and we tend to imagine sometimes that we are.
That's right. I agree. That's a false image.
Mm-hmm.
There are many other countries equally as diverse as America. They just approach it differently, but nevertheless, different countries have their different ways of embracing, or sometimes, sadly, rejecting diversity. But that's another topic for another day.
Right.
For now, Jane, I'm so happy to record with you again. This is really fun to do this remotely from your house and my house. Hopefully, this means that we could do more recordings.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And for the time being, on this Sunday night, thank you again, as always, for joining me here tonight. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure, Jesse. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of LPLE. Let's practice listening in English from Dialogue FM. Subscribe to LPLE on iTunes to hear the latest episodes, or listen to past episodes on our website, dialogue.fm. That's dialog.fm. If you have questions or comments about English, or if you would like for us to use a word, grammar, or idiom in our conversation so you can learn how to use it correctly, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at dialogue.fm or Facebook at facebook.com/dialoguefm.